allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for one nation.
Thank you. It is wonderful to see so many people here and have our auditorium full again. Okay. We have a very, very full night planned ahead. I really ask for your patience, and I hope you'll stick with us through the night, and I'll tell you a little bit about the agenda for the evening. Okay. So good evening and welcome to our Safety and Social Media Forum, Parents as Partners in Promoting Internet Safety. I really am so pleased to see so many families and students joining us tonight. I do apologize if we ran out of food. I have to say that for somebody coming from my upbringing, that is a no-no. You never run out of food. You always have leftovers. So we did have more people than we were expecting. And there was a catastrophe in the pizza place. So they were delayed, but thank you all for being here. I hope you will find this evening's presentations and discussions of value. Tonight, we will be the beginning of a collaborative effort to support our students in the safe use of technology. We see the development of our students' digital citizenship as a community effort, and I want to emphasize that we are your partners. We will tackle and address this issue together. Kids and teens in America are spending more time than ever using screens and social media, with the number of hours spent online having risen sharply during the pandemic, as we all know. According to a recent report from the Pew Research Center, and you're going to hear more about that in Dr. Foyer's slides, 95% of teens use a smartphone and 45% say they are online almost constantly. About 70% of teens are on Snapchat and Instagram, while 85% are on YouTube. One would think that with all this near constant socializing would make teens feel more connected than ever before, but that unfortunately is not the case. As you will see in the details tonight, research suggests that social media is increasing student anxiety and depression, eclipsing any positive role it could potentially play. The very definition of social media may be misleading, according to experts who are finding that the more time teens spend on social media, the lonelier and more anxious they become. The higher the cell phone use, the more time spent on social media, and the higher the anxiety. There is evidence that peer relationships actually get worse the more you use your cell phone. Digital citizenship is the safe and responsible use of digital tools. Digital citizenship is critical. Much like as we grew up, we learned to exist and interact in society as good citizens. We need to learn appropriate behaviors and social habits for interacting in a digital world as well. Our students need to learn about digital literacy as well, with an emphasis on helping them to build a healthy relationship with technology. Because technology in so many ways is incredibly valuable and such a critical part of our lives, we must empower this generation's relationship with social media in positive ways through advocacy, education, and providing access to resources for youth and their families. We support and believe in digital well-being. Our children must learn how to become ethical and knowledgeable media consumers and producers. There has never been a more important time to teach youth how to critically evaluate and creatively produce media, not just the printed word, but visual and audio media as well. They begin to understand how to participate and contribute to media discourse in powerful and positive ways. They need to learn what it means to live in a participatory culture, very different than how some of us grew up. But how do we get there? We will do this together through learning and listening together as partners to support our children. Tonight, you will hear from our esteemed panel, which includes various experts in this field or related to this field, regarding how technology has impacted the lives of our students and how it may in the future if we're not careful. There are, of course, numerous positive benefits to using technology wisely. And since technology and social media have become an essential part of our lives today, we need to be very mindful and aware of its dangers and consequences. You will hear about social, emotional, practical, and legal consequences of the misuse of these technologies. And we will also offer you some practical solutions that you can take with you to help help your students use technology safely and constructively. You will also have an opportunity to ask questions, and you'll hear more about that from Mr. Fisk in a minute, make comments, and help us to define our next steps. We see this as just the beginning of a dialogue in this community. This is the beginning, as I said, of a conversation with you, parents, and students as well. We need to work together to promote the positive aspects of these tools that are omnipresent in our lives. We don't have all the answers. However, tonight we want to explore some of the issues related to use and misuse of social media in our schools and the greater community, and offer some solutions and suggestions that we can support together in order to keep our students healthy and safe. The bottom line is that social media is here to stay, and it will continue to be a big part of our lives and our children's lives every single day. We hope to plan future events in the late spring and beyond to continue a dialogue in various formats so we can work together to ensure that the children of our community develop a healthy relationship with technology, and most importantly, that they are safe, healthy, and mentally well. So I thank you again. Just a moment. Thank you, Mr. Fisk. So just could you go back to the, so you all have a program. You should have a program that is describing the agenda for tonight. We planned on about 90 minutes. So I do ask for your attention and to bear with us. The raffles will take place at the end of the night because we want you to hear everything that we have planned for you. We've worked very, very hard on this, and we've been thinking about doing this all year. We wanted to wait until things were better with COVID so that we could bring people together. And that time has finally come. So again, we ask for your attention and your courtesy for staying throughout the presentation. So just a word about raffles and donors. We obviously didn't get enough food for everybody tonight, but these are the local caterers and restaurants that have supported our efforts tonight. So we always like to ask you to support those people that have donated, or those restaurants that have donated to us. And we do appreciate their support. And these are the amazing raffles that we're going to be raffling off tonight. There are raffles for students. There are raffles for adults. We have a television, AirPods, gift cards, a lot of things for students, a lot of giveaways, and things for adults as well. So we hope that you will stay till the end of the evening. The raffles are free. You don't have to buy them. You just hold on to your ticket. There should be separate colors for adults and students. So with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to our Director of Technology and Learning Analytics, Dr. Ryan Fisk.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'm going to stay right here. So Superintendent Ruiz said something that I want to latch on to: participatory. We want to make this a participatory evening for all of you here. I invite you to look at the slide right behind me. There's two ways that we can join tonight's conversation. It's going to be a great one, too. We have a QR code up here on the screen. If you take your smartphone, open up the camera app, and just hold it up to that code, you'll be able to join our Padlet wall. The other way you're going to be able to participate, if you'd rather type in the web address, we've got it over there as well, tinyurl.com, and then that 331 forum Padlet. That's going to be the way to join into this conversation. We are fielding questions for our panelists that you can post at any time throughout the evening. Internet testimonials, if you have some feedback that you'd like to share, personal experiences, positive or negative or otherwise, we're going to invite you to go in there as well. And then another prompt that we have: where do we go from here as we transition towards the end of the evening? What comes next? As Superintendent Ruiz said, this is the start, this is the continuation of an ongoing dialogue. So what can we do as partners in this journey together next? So we invite you all to participate in our Padlet using the information behind me. I'm going to put this slide back up periodically, and I think if you have your flyers, the links are on there as well with those QR codes.
If you are an adult and you're having trouble accessing it, just turn to a young person next to you and they will gladly help you.
Okay, so I'm on now. I'm going to start by offering a little bit of background. I'm going to try to set the stage for the evening, sort of what got us here. And I'm going to, as efficiently as I can, take you on a a 60-year journey of the internet in less than 2 minutes. I'm going to start with this video. Let's see if it plays. Oh, it gets better. So I came across this video. I went onto Google one day and I just typed in very randomly, what is the best video on the internet right now? And that's what came up. But I couldn't help but chuckle at this because we're talking about social media and we're talking about, is the video funny? Sure. Is there some misdirection? Definitely. And we saw that at the very end. And this kind of makes me think a little bit about social media because this participatory nature that we're all in on the internet has kind of turned us all into our own publicists. We're giving that filtered view, and that's what we're seeing of other people. So it's an important start to a conversation and our good use of social media, and also being able to sift through the noise and the nonsense. And we're going to hear a lot about that tonight. But let's rewind a second. How did we get here? How did we get to the point that we're at now? So we're going to dial back time a little bit. The very start of the internet, all the way back in the 60s, it was a node-to-node, 2 computers out in California, the size of basements. You probably heard this story before. It was one college talking to another. They sent a text message. The whole system almost exploded. But what happened is, we added more and more and more computers, more nodes into the system. And that became the modern internet that we all know and we use and we love today. And then as the internet grew and developed, we have these web technologies, right? Web 1.0, Web 2.0, Web 3.0. Once upon a time, the internet was largely read-only. You'd go online, you'd read the news, you'd look at an article, and then you'd move along. The content was centralized. And then as we transitioned to Web 2 and even now Web 3, we're seeing that the internet is decentralized. Websites like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, they would not exist if it wasn't for the content that all of us, are putting on those sites. So that speaks to the decentralization of these websites. We are our own content curators. So I think there's a Marvel reference here. Dr. Krauss, Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Did I get it right? Yes. So we have these devices at our fingertips. We have a decentralized internet. And there's great things. There's great things, folks, that we can do with the internet. I'm looking for career opportunities out of college, out of high school. I'm looking for that right college to go to. Maybe I'm going on to LinkedIn and trying to find other people to network with, to get connected to. Maybe after the pandemic, after very emotionally trying times, I'm going on to a website. It was Mr. Healy, you shared this with me, the same here. Top one over there, I've got the full name of that address. For top left. Same here. Yeah. So, there's pockets. There's these water cooler conversations on the internet, really valuable stuff. Maybe I'm just looking for a chicken pot pie recipe. So there's a website for that. There's a search engine for that. Maybe I'm just trying to figure out why on earth do they sell trumpets at Lidl? And there's an answer for that on the internet too. So it's really a matter of finding yourself to that right conversation. But where things can go sour, and that's really the main focus of tonight's conversation, is when we when we look at the other stories, the misuse of social media. We have some news articles behind me. You're going to see some more in some of the slides that we have tonight. Your digital footprint, what you're putting out there on the internet, data privacy, and of course, cyberbullying. And I'm going to just read this quote also about cyberbullying. Kids are biologically built to become much more susceptible to peers in adolescence. We knew that already, but social media has magnified those peer influence processes to be much, much more dangerous than they were before. Because of that connectedness, it's a double-edged sword. So I'm going to pass the mic on in just a sec, but we're going to hear it from a lot of people up and down this panel. Various topics, the impact on mental health, supporting our students, impact on our schools, the legal consequences, addressing inappropriate use in schools, and controlling the variables. And now more than ever, this is a really valuable conversation to have. And as Superintendent Ruiz said, this needs to be an ongoing discussion and an ongoing partnership. I'm really excited to be here on this panel, and I thank you all for attending. I'm going to pass it on to Superintendent Ruiz to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Fisk. Great video. So as you can see, we do have some guests with us tonight, and we also have some of our own administrators and faculty who are going to speak to you. But first, one of our first guest speaker is Dr. Vera Foyer. Dr. Foyer is the Associate Vice President of School Mental Health from Northwell Health. She's the Director of Pediatric Emergency Psychiatry and Behavioral Health Urgent Care. Dr. Foyer completed residency training at Drexel University and Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Fellowship at Hofstra Northwell Health. She has been on the faculty at Northwell Health for 12 years and has experience in pediatric and adult addiction, consultation, and emergency psychiatry. She participated in developing the Northwell Health Emergency Telepsychiatry Network and led the opening of the Behavioral Health Urgent Care at CCMC, as well as community-embedded school-serving urgent care centers, such as the one that we are a part of in Rockville Center, and there is a new one in Mineola. She has been collaborating with school districts to expand access to mental health care for students, as well as to provide community education and professional development to school communities. She has been involved with local and national work groups developing care standards for pediatric crisis behavioral health care, and she is a distinguished fellow of child and adolescent psychiatry. She serves as the co-chair of the Emergency Child Psychiatry Committee of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and is the immediate past president of the New York Council of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. She is an associate professor of psychiatry, pediatrics, and emergency medicine at the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell Health. Her interests include access to mental health, care for children, suicide prevention, and collaborating with school and primary care providers. We are very, very fortunate to have an amazing relationship with Dr. Foyer. She is a rock star in this field and has done so much to help and support our community, as well as our faculty and our administration in supporting the wellness of the mental wellness of our students in our school district. So please welcome Dr. Foyer.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that very unnecessary and lengthy introduction. But thank you guys, and thank you for having me. And this is such an important topic, and one that I'm very passionate about, both as a child psychiatrist, as a doctor, and as a parent. I have kids myself. I have a 4th and an 8th grader. My 8th grader tells me how unlucky he is that it is my job to teach people what impact this has on kids, because, you know, that impacts his life. Really, just to talk about, talk about this topic. It was said earlier, but it is something that's really important for all of us to recognize. Technology is here to stay. In a survey where they surveyed kids your age that are here in the room, kids had said no matter what the adults think, no matter how upset they are, social media is going to be here and it is our future. So we have to recognize that, we have to understand that, and we have to really work under that assumption that really the internet is all around us. Rising availability rates, don't really 95% of the United States or the Northern Hemisphere and about 70% of the world at this point is connected to the internet. Smartphones are increasingly available. The average age that kids get smartphones is decreasing. And really, you can see here when they asked high schoolers how old they were when they got their first smartphone, you can see the breakdown here. That's current high schoolers. Now kids are getting it even younger, and the average age is down to 9. So kids are 9 years old when they tend to get their first smartphone, and what's on that phone and how that phone is used and utilized, really makes a huge difference in terms of how that smartphone is going to impact on their life. And really virtually everybody by middle school and high school has a smartphone and has access to it. At least most kids, 97% by high school. So also when asking high schoolers when they got their first social media account, they also, here's the breakdown of the answers, and most kids, it's around age 12, 13. You know, I guess that's, you can yell in the answer if you know it, but does anybody know what age is it legal for kids to have a social media account? 13. 12 and 13 for most sites, and some sites don't have a limit, but most sites do have a limit. And 12 and 13 is really when you're supposed to have an account with Facebook, Snapchat. It depends on the platform, but most platforms do have an age limit. And below that, you can have an account if you lie about your age, obviously, but really that is the only way, and it is not legal. So that's something to highlight, that a lot of kids do get accounts much, much younger, or get access to the content in other ways. In total, we know that about 95% of teens are connected to the internet, and 85% are social media users. So that was the study that Superintendent Ruiz referenced earlier. Oh, I'm just, okay, little delay. Okay, so we go back. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. Then I just wait. So this slide is about how our habits further changed in the last 2 years. So they did a survey again with kids, parents, to learn about how habits have changed during the pandemic. And according to this survey, 17% increase in tween and teen use of stream media since the pandemic. The amount of time spent, you can see the averages up significantly. For younger middle school tweens, it's about 5.5 hours we're up to per day. And for high schoolers, about 8 hours and 40 minutes a day. That's a significant amount of time of our awake time. And what's significant about that, it's not just the time we spend and how we spend it online, but the time we don't spend on other things, because this is taking place of other activities and other opportunities to engage and develop differently, which kids need. Even, you know, little kids need it, older kids need it, and at every age they need it in different ways. So the percentage of tweens that use social media ever is about 40%, every day about 20%, according to this survey, and that is increasing. And in the question at the bottom, if you had to pick one site you could not live without, that was a question for the kids. One site you couldn't live without. Yell it in, guys. What would it be? One site. YouTube, TikTok. Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly right. A lot. Okay. So thank you for that. Thank you for the feedback. So obviously the kids have a lot that they think about, but they cannot live without. And even that term, and that, settle down, kids, so we can talk more about this. I know it's an exciting topic. So YouTube, Snapchat really were among the first, and the kids in the survey as well. And just really this concept of there are these sites and I simply couldn't live without them, or I don't know what I would do without them, is you know, significant on its own. It doesn't switch on my screen. Okay, no worries. It'll switch in a second. So in terms of you know, other results that we know about how kids use, so YouTube, Snapchat, and Instagram are the most popular apps currently, according to surveys for middle and high school students. That's probably accurate here too. TikTok tends to be preferred more by girls, and YouTube more by boys. 39, and also an important result from this survey was that 40% of sixth graders said that when they try to talk to their parents are often on their phone or on social media or distracted by technology. So that is also significant to talk about, is that ourselves, myself included, my phone at my, you know, nearby at all times. really, we ourselves are very connected, and very often when we're in our families are distracted by our phones as well. And then 42% of 8th graders said that they rarely or never pay attention as to how companies might use their information. That's not something that's of concern. And we do know, and I'm sure other speakers will mention and talk about this as well, how data on the internet gets utilized. And data gets bought, data gets exchanged, data gets sold. You get the ads immediately. You talk about something, you get the appropriate advertisements right away. You get YouTube videos spec to you that you're interested in or you're spending more time with. All the media we use is interactive. It learns us and it influences what we see and what we watch. And so, but kids, I guess in this survey, most kids or almost half the kids didn't really think about that. 21% of 7th graders say that they almost never see anybody stand up on social media when they're seeing bullying. And I'm not going to go in detail into cyberbullying. It was mentioned. It's a whole big topic on its own. Certainly one of the big risks and one of the big potential harms in social media. And the adults in the room, if you have social media, just think about how many comments you read on social media that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe people just commented that, or how judgmental people can be and how mean and cruel they can be, because there's this perceived veil of distance and anonymity that makes us say different things than we say in person. It's just our brains react differently to that interaction. And then I do have the out of touch emojis off there. So apparently, according to this survey and the kids that were asked in the survey, if you use those, you're out of touch. You don't know, you're old. That's it. Girls versus boys. Again, how there is a significant difference. And this is going to be important when we talk about the more detailed mental health impact. Unfortunately, data does show girls and boys use social media differently. And it seems like particularly adolescent females are being impacted in terms of self-esteem, mood, anxiety, body image, and things of that nature, more so than boys. 68% of girls say that they feel pressure to post content that makes them look good to others. That is an important aspect of the way they use social media. And then 50% of boys use social media but never post anything. So a lot more boys are on there but not necessarily posting, whereas girls feel the pressure that they need to post things, need to make things look good. And then the app breakdown, I already mentioned, TikTok more popular with girls and YouTube with boys. So moving on, talking about benefits and harms. Again, the summary here is that there's definitely benefits. How technology influences us and our kids really depends on how we use it and how we develop, what kind of healthy habits for life we instill and develop. And the effects really matter, and they are complicated. And really, I'll talk a little bit about how we know it impacts the brain and brain development, but the reality is we don't know all that much yet. And kids are starting to use technology younger and younger and more. So really the impact on brain development and how that's gonna evolve, we're still, gonna continue to study. But definitely we do know from studies that there's significant physical and mental health impact of technology use. Then there's significant use and extended use. And again, it's not necessarily about what you do, but what you don't do instead. So really missing out on decrease in physical play, human touch, one-on-one social interaction, which is more reciprocal for the little kids, sensory development, motor development, not doing things outside and in the real world, learning by touch, learning by movement, all the ways that you can learn a lot through technology, but there's certain things you cannot learn through technology. Sedentary lifestyle and the associated obesity issues are a significant health concern with technology use. And then screens do disrupt sleep, whether they use it immediately before sleep or whether you have the technology in the room with the constant interruption with sounds or with just the attraction that kids might have to engaging and checking whether there's a message or whether somebody responded. the temptation when you see that others are talking on Snapchat and I'm missing out, and you hear it beep, and what are you going to do? All of that disrupting sleep, and then inadequate sleep impacting mental and physical health is an important component. And then impact on live social interactions, and not just with the kids, with each other, but within the families. Because oftentimes kids, you know, if it's just social media, it's more problematic than if it's social media plus in-person interaction, which now that we're back in person and can be in a room like this together and we sit here together with our friends is more possible to do again. But really the big difference between how we socially interact through screens and how we do that in person, there's a significant difference in how we are attuned into one's emotions or each other's emotions. Even, you know, and there's a hierarchy. Texting and just messaging is the lowest connection. When there's a voice connected, when there's at least a phone conversation, a voice conversation, that conveys a little bit more and then results in more connectedness and more, relationship building. And then when there's a video component, it's even more. And then when it's person, it's its full entity and you're really interacting with the person. And there's so much you miss. I am now that we're going back into the district, seeing people after 2 years for the first time, and you're like, oh my goodness, you know, or they stand up and, oh my God, you're 9 months pregnant. So it's definitely a very different way of interacting in person and through this media. And then safety concerns, again, colleagues will talk more about that later on, but loss of privacy, exposure to cyberbullying, inappropriate content, violence, sex offenders, chat rooms, your digital footprint, all that's going to be talked in more detail by others. So I'm going to not go into a lot of detail, but that is definitely part of the concern. Yeah. Okay. And then I am going to talk a little bit about the biological impact of addiction. So when we use social media or screens extensively and in a way so much that it's hard to do anything else and it's hard to resist the use, we are entering that territory of addictive use. And the definitions around addiction with technology are the same as they are with substances. When it's starting to impact on your life, when your relationships, your academics are deteriorating, when you are really desperate or discontrolled or dysregulated or out of control behaviors or feelings, when you're not allowed to use, all of those things, the diagnostic criteria is, again, very similar to what it is for substances. And we know from studies and brain studies that the impact on the brain is also similar. It's the same neural circuitry and nerve pathways that get impacted with addictive technology use that gets impacted with addictive substance use. So in a way, it is similar to using drugs, the way that it impacts our brains, because the satisfaction and the positive experience that comes from using technology is so significant that when you're using and activating that circuitry constantly, that reward pathway that it drives, it has an impact on brain. And we do know that addictive use impacts executive functioning. That's your thinking, that's your CEO of the brain, your frontal lobe that allows us to organize, think, memorize, all of those things, those cognitive functions. It can impact impulses and impulsivity. And we do see this with kids. And, think about yourself or, your kids or people in your family when you're really like involved in that technology and then all of a sudden it's disrupted or taken away. How impulsive can people get? And it's because of that impact on the brain. And then empathy gets impacted, which impacts relationships and connectedness. And it really does make it more difficult for kids to truly connect with one another and to truly understand each other's experience and what somebody else is going through. And we are seeing the impact of that. And again, just the example of that I gave earlier with cyberbullying, that distance that the technology creates, that perceived anonymity and distance, and that constantly seeing this type of content online makes you in a way less empathic and less understanding, or makes it seem like a lesser deal, not such big a deal. It's all over, right? All of this content. So, but when it impacts you and it's about you, then you perceive it much differently than when you see it happen to others. So important things to consider. And then the last thing I'm going to close with is really talking about suicide statistics, which I know is a sharp switch in topics, but I do want to bring it up because the data on teen and adolescent suicide, unfortunately, is not great, and the trends are not great. It is the second leading cause of death, and a lot of kids in increasing numbers are reporting, and this is high school data, high school kids reporting feeling sad and hopeless and having suicidal thoughts. And on the next slide, you'll see that through the decades, these numbers have moved. We have had these high numbers before we had good treatments for depression. We've had high numbers like we do now, but then there was again a sharp increase around the same time that all of the social media outlets went viral and allowed kids on. And there's this connect specifically with 10 to 14-year-old females, that there's a significant increase between the years when social media was more widely available. And there is, therefore theories and research going into how that might be connected. And again, the lessons that we can learn from this data on the next slide, going into more detail, really the summary here is that kids spend more and more time on electronic communication than in-person interaction, and they just communicate differently. And we do know that interactions are different and provide different emotional closeness when it's in person than when it's electronic. And then lastly, benefits of use, and then I'm gonna give it over because I think we'll talk more about healthy habits and stuff. But benefits are there. Collaborating with others. We learned so much about the benefits during the pandemic. Collaborating with others, allowing us, and Dr. Fisk mentioned some of that, allowing us to connect with others and connect with social groups that we might not be able to connect with, and so on and so forth. But again, we just got to be mindful of how we balance things and whether we're developing healthy habits for our kids. And healthy habits, I'm going to just make 3 points and then I'll give it over to talk in more detail about that. But really, parents, do your homework, have your kids teach you, know about the apps, what are they using, how is it used, what are the parental controls. My favorite source of information is commonsensemedia.com. I have it on the resource slides. It has a parent guide for everything, any movie that comes out, video game that comes out, website, new app, you can read about it, you can learn about it, you can learn about what to be mindful of or what to know, and ask your kids to show you. I'm sure if I asked, which we don't have time for, but if we asked your kids here to show you and tell you how their favorite app works, they would be really able to teach you a lot. And know your kids, know what they can and cannot handle, know the right time to introduce new things to them and how, and establish rules around its use, not just for kids, but for yourself and for the whole family. Having a family media use plan where we all agree to the same rules and we're all part of it is, fair and overall helps the entire system. And having kids be a part of creating those plans and hearing their voice and what they think is reasonable, and then coming up together with what you can agree on as a family is a really important one. And the ultimate goal is to teach our kids to think critically and to learn how to evaluate the dangers, the benefits, and how to really use this to their best advantage. I'm gonna, give it over to talk more about the details. Oh, the line. I don't know if you want to mention the beginning. Since that was the only thing that I didn't.
Okay, I'd like to turn the microphone now over. Thank you, Dr. Foyer. That really, it's a tremendous amount of information. This presentation will be on our website. The event is also being recorded, so if you want to go back and see any parts of this, because it's a lot of information, especially a lot of the medical information, but please, it is really important. And I think it should be, listened to again and again so you can understand the serious potential impact on your students' health. I'm going to turn the microphone now over to, oh, yes, no, that's great. We have a couple of
All right.
questions.
I'm going to jump in with a quick commercial break here. We got a question from our Padlet. And also just to give a shout out to Ms. Maney and Mr. Kennedy, who are supporting our Zoom session. Speaking of connections, so that we could all enjoy this session together, and the recording will be on our website. As Superintendent Ruiz said, we had a question come in about socializing, and here it is. How do we provide balance for children when it feels like everybody is allowed to do all sorts of things on social media and they become targeted because they aren't allowed? I'm going to put that to Dr. Foyer or if someone else on the panel.
Yeah, so definitely a difficult balance. And I don't think that not allowing kids at all to be on social media is necessarily the answer. So depending on your child, their age, and what are they ready to handle is how those decisions need to be made. I mean, I do think it's important to see that their kids are ready to use social media. Do they truly understand what are the limits, what are the dangers, and then what are the alternatives? So yes, everybody's on that, but what else are they using? And I do know it's true. Kids don't text, they snap. You know, they do utilize other technology and communicate differently, but really it's more a matter of getting them ready for it and making sure that they are prepared to use it in a way that they need to use it. And honestly, and waiting until at least it's legal, right? I mean, really teaching them that lesson about life too, that we must follow the law. and this is the law, and that is what we as a family gonna follow. And then until then, we'll get you there, and there's alternatives, and helping support the alternatives and encouraging and inviting kids over in person and encouraging other ways of communicating, and then getting there. And then when they get there, making sure that they are ready, that they know how they're gonna utilize it, what are they gonna use for. I mean, we don't have time to go in, and I'm happy to come at another time to do a specific discussion about the specific apps themselves and how you teach your kids to use them in appropriate ways while you're getting the benefit of letting them stay connected with their peers and supporting socialization, making sure that it does lead to in-person connections. Because if it is just being on Snapchat and reading everybody's snaps, but not having any real friendships or connections out of it, they're not necessarily better off. They might think they are, and they might beg you and plead you and tell you that they are going to be better off, but they're not necessarily better off unless it is also accompanied by relationships that are meaningful and connected, social connections. So don't be fooled by thinking that just because people get a million snaps, that means that they have, true connections that are going to be truly helpful for them, because it might backfire and they might think that this is what they need. But in fact, if they're not ready for it, or if it's not utilized properly, not leading to those connections, it might just be harming them.
Thank you, Dr. Foy. And remember, what we used to say is life is not what you see on social media. People are posting things on social media that are the best, or they're presenting things in a certain way, and it's not necessarily the reality of the way someone leads their life. So, okay, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Mednick, our junior senior high school social worker.
Okay, let's see if this is working. Hello, can you hear me? Yes, I'm going to lean forward a little bit. Okay, so as highlighted in the information shared by Dr. Foyer, the technology revolution has brought new stresses and new challenges to both childhood, adolescent, and parenting. As we all know, technology, screens, and social media are not going away. They will continue to be a main source of information, entertainment, communication, and connection. Therefore, it is important that as adults, we shift our lens and we try to see that the challenges that come with this technology connected world, there's also opportunities. We are not helpless, and there are many things that adults can do to increase the internal skills and the external resources that will support youth as they navigate childhood and adolescence in this digital world. Perhaps one of the greatest ways that caring adults can support youth in navigating the challenges of this digital world is to help them understand emotions that help them build the skills necessary for stress management and resilience. Our emotions exist to teach us things. They give us information about our experiences in the present moment, and they often serve as a buzzer that activates us to make change. So talk to your kids regularly about challenging feelings and help them develop the skills to manage these emotions when these feelings arise. It's important that you share some examples of times that you felt these emotions, especially the really, really difficult emotions, the ones that most kids face through their interactions online, like loneliness, rejection, and self-doubt. Let them know that what's helped you navigate these challenging emotions. This helps normalize these emotions, and it supports youth in developing the positive coping strategies that they need to strengthen their resilience. It's also important that we help the students and youth define stress and help them recognize that stress is a normal part of life and not always something that needs to become overwhelming. Reframing the way that we talk about stress and helping youth see some stressors as an opportunity to grow will help them navigate these difficult situations both online and offline in a healthy way. And when your child or a student shares with you that they're experiencing overwhelming stress, ask them if they have any ideas on how to solve the problem. Research shows that teens actually experience increased stress when parents or adults jump in to try to solve the problems. So when we do that as adults or parents, we are decreasing our own stress, but we are actually increasing the stress of our youth. So prompt them to lead the way in identifying possible actions and solutions. To help initiate and strengthen your child's problem-solving abilities, you can ask them 2 simple questions. Do you have any ideas for facing this stressful situation? And if you do, and if you'd like my help, just let me know, because I'm here to help you brainstorm some solutions. And while not an everyday event, kids often get messages or see posts from friends who are going through some really difficult times. So empower youth to recognize these distress signals that indicate that there might be a serious situation that requires adult intervention. And let them know that if they come to you, your goal is to work with them, not to take over. Open, calm, and non-judgmental communication is a key to mediating and mitigating the harms of social media. You've got to remember that our kids are already hearing about the evils of social media and how it is ruining a generation, which often makes them feel insulted and defensive. As soon as adults start talking to kids about the harms of social media, we have lost our audience. We have lost the potential to have meaningful conversations about what kids are actually doing online. Because we've already, through talking about the risks, we've already pathologized their pleasures and their hobbies before we've really even begun the conversation. So what's important is that before talking to youth, especially teenagers, about the online dangers and risks of social media, it's critical that you invest some time discussing and listening to the benefits of social media. Some of the common positive benefits of social media that students share with me regularly include a way to access information and resources, a way to help very especially shy, introverted youth communicate, a really amazing medium for self-expression and deep conversations, a way to stay in contact with friends and loved ones, an avenue to follow and connect with role models in other communities that make them feel seen and understood, a way to celebrate successes and do kind things for others, and a way to seek help or a way to identify others who may need help. Approach these conversations with a real sense of curiosity. Ask questions and show real interest in their answers. When provided a safe space to have a calm, non-judgmental conversation, youth have some very powerful thoughts and experiences that we can learn from. Oh, and that is one of my most recommended books for any parents looking for a book on this topic. It's a really great book. Once calm and fluid lines of communication are established, it becomes much easier to negotiate boundaries and set limits. A good place to start is with a discussion about times and places where it makes sense for everyone in the household to put their screens away. Invite youth to make suggestions on household screen rules, as well as specific individual rules that they believe are appropriate for them. Involving youth in this process is a powerful way to let them know that you respect their thoughts and that their input is important. In the end, they may not get all of their preferences. They probably won't get a lot of them, but you're demonstrating to them that you want to understand and consider their hopes and wishes. Once everyone has provided their input, work together to create shared expectations. This is also a good time to discuss how you plan to be engaged with their social media use. Try to avoid the "I will be watching everything you do" approach. I cannot stress enough how often youth share with me how frustrating it is when adults have that mentality instead of a supportive one. So when establishing rules, be clear that it is not about you trying to catch them messing up. However, let them know that there are times where you will need to check their online activity, but you will always do so with their privacy in mind. Remember, when you feel supported, they are a lot less likely to hide things and less likely to break the rules. We also want kids to come to us when they feel they've made a mistake or when people are treating them poorly. So let them know that you recognize that they may push boundaries or break the rules sometimes. However, you hope that they will come to you when something like this happens so that you can work it out together. And if a consequence is appropriate, remember that the goal is not to overpunish them. When that happens, their anger towards their parents often becomes the focus rather than learning from their mistakes. Perhaps the most significant way that adults can support healthy use of social media is to model the behavior that they want to see. While we know this logically, it can be very, very hard to put into practice. So I encourage all of us to use this opportunity to examine our own use of mobile devices and social media and look for ways that we can improve our use and decrease our use. Children are watching what we do way more than they are listening to what we say. I can't tell you how many times students tell me about the hypocrisy they notice when adults tell them to get off their devices, but the adults are the ones who seem obsessed. Modeling effective use of technology is a pillar of effective parenting in the digital age. Research shows that parents' use of digital technology is largely correlated to how their children will engage in technology. An increased screen time by children is linked to higher screen time by parents. We pave a better path forward by expanding the lens to think about social media use as a universal concern, not just a youth concern. Adults and adolescents should work together to turn social media negatives into positives with open minds, a fluid dialogue, improved education, and by modeling good habits. And I will now introduce Vincent Healy, the Director of People Personnel Services, who will share some information on programs and services in the district to support our students.
All right, thank you very much. So I will be brief, but I just want to add the disclaimer that all of the information about our programs and supports available in the district are available on the district website under the Wellness tab. You'll notice specifically we have a whole section on Northwell Health, including all of the newsletters, past and present, that have links to all the Northville Health workshops, which is just one of the many wonderful benefits of our partnership. Aside from also Dr. Coyer joining us here tonight, and of course the Behavioral Health Clinic in Rockville Center. I also want to just point out that we have a really outstanding mental health team in this building, to address the social emotional needs of youth and adolescents. You can never have enough psychologists, social workers, and school counselors. They really are just such amazing people who go above and beyond every minute of every day. And I just want to acknowledge some of them who are here tonight who are not on the panel with me, and of course, Ms. Mednick, Ms. Shutta, Ms. Bonacorsi, and Ms. Weissman-Canali are all here tonight as well. So years ago, the district began SEL push-in lessons. So some of the topics that are covered: stress management, conflict resolution. Generally, the format is a school counselor or social worker pushes into a classroom. They deliver the lesson, they talk with the students, they connect with them for that period. And then, the period of time passes, a couple of weeks before they might see that counselor again. So it became evident to us that we needed to do something more. And so at the beginning of this year, we looked into two programs which are defined as upstream programs. And what that means is we're catching kids before they're in crisis. We're catching kids before they pick up their phone and post that inappropriate or frankly mean message on social media. And so two of those programs I'm just going to briefly introduce tonight. The first is at the elementary level, and that's called the Ruler approach. Comes from the Yale School, the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And really, if I could break down Ruler for you, it's as simple as this. It's when kids come into the classroom, they're checking in on how they're feeling. They're identifying, I'm feeling pretty pleasant today, I'm feeling not so pleasant today, or I'm feeling full of energy today, or I'm feeling like I don't have energy today. And then they're, based on that scale, they're putting a label on that emotion. And so what that does is it normalizes talking about how you're feeling. And so for a kid who might have walked into their classroom that morning, having been really upset about something that happened the night before, the day before, who may not say anything the entire school day, and their teacher may have no idea what's going on with them. They're coming in, they're checking in, they're saying, actually, I'm feeling this way. And they're being validated in that, and they're being recognized by their adults and their peers as, you're having a bad day and that's okay. Or you're having a fantastic day and we're really happy that you're here. We're so glad that we get to enjoy that. And so from there, kids begin to connect on a more emotional level. They begin to talk about their feelings more, and it sort of gradually improves the culture of school over time. So Ruler is not an immediate fix. It's not something that you just, it's not a pre-packaged program that you just bring in and everyone just buys into it all at once. It's something that grows over time. And so 6 of us were trained in the district, and we're beginning with 2 pilot classrooms, 1 in each elementary school this year. And those brave teachers who, again, are just wonderful, selfless people who are taking on this extra challenge, they're going to pilot it for us. They're going to demonstrate it for their fellow teachers, and then next year it'll be school-wide in both elementary schools. Just to give you a brief view of what I'm talking about. So that's the mood meter. That's what I was talking about. It helps kids. It's sort of a very simple chart to help kids identify how they're feeling. And Ruler, it stands for recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating your emotions. So the second program is at the secondary level. And I'm pretty excited about this because we just had the training this past Friday. It's called Sources of Strength. You'll see the wheel behind me. The wheel has sort of these 8 tenets of what it is to have a healthy lifestyle. So with Source of Strength, it's an upstream prevention program. So it began as a suicide prevention program, and what they found was that it also helped prevent kids from falling victim to substance abuse. It also helped kids have better outcomes academically because they're just paying attention to themselves. They're building healthy peer-to-peer relationships. And again, they're talking about their emotions as opposed to just reacting to them. And so this next slide has a couple of photos from our training session. We were in the small gym. Like I said on Friday, it was a small group of staff members and a small group of students that those staff members recruited into the program. The idea is you start with a small group of people. That small group of people is going to begin to recruit more people, and over time, it has this sort of culminating effect where it becomes just part of your culture. So that was really important to us with these two programs. We didn't want something that was just, comes in a box and it's great and we deliver it and it's done. We wanted something that became part of our culture. And I can tell you from being in this training that we had a room full of teenagers who were not on their phones. They were interacting with each other. They were talking. And these were not, we weren't sitting down and saying, tell me your deep-seated feelings. We were sitting down saying, tell us about a positive friendship you have in your life and why that person is important. We were asking them, what's one healthy habit that you can identify in your life? Like, let's talk about that. It's just getting kids to open up and talk, which is so important. And it's building those sort of relationships with trusted adults in the building, but also with each other. So that peer-to-peer support is really critical, and it's something that we're really focused on in the district and something that we're very excited about going into next year. And so you will be hearing more about both of these programs as this year concludes and as next year begins. But they're two things that we're very proud of, and they're two things that we're very excited about. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the Linewise family search filter. And so I can't speak to the technological aspect of it. Mr. Fisk would be the better person to speak to that. But essentially what happens is when a child is logged into their ERSD account or they're using their ERSD Chromebook and they search something in Google, and that search happens to flag as either bullying, substance abuse, potential suicidal thoughts, depression, and violence. It sends a message to administrators. We get to see the search term word for word with the child search. We see who the user was who searched the term, and we see what the date and time that it happened. We get notified immediately. And what happens from there is we connect that child to a mental health provider who's going to check in with them, who's going to ask them why they searched that term and potentially provide ongoing support. When it happens outside of school hours, usually it's one of us who calls the parent directly. By the way, when students when we are notified when students are in school, the parents also get notified right away. We have a conversation with that parent and we provide additional support. So your child search for this. If it's a more immediate concern, these are people who can help you. We provide them with phone numbers and resources. And what this has done in the 2 years since it was implemented is we've been able to get kids who may have been suffering in silence. We've been able to identify them, connect them with a trusted adult or connect them with a mental health resource and get them the help that they need. So it's been really just this sort of wonderful addition. It started 2 years ago, and it's, again, something that we're very happy about. And so with that being said, I'm going to turn things back over to Superintendent Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. As I said in the beginning of the night, this is really about a partnership about what the school district is doing and can do more of, and what we can reach out and help you, equip you with the tools to help your children so that we work together. Our next speaker, thank you, Mr. Healy, for that information. We're really excited about these new programs. Our next speaker is Brian Shanahan from Alteris. The district contracts with a security consultant service. Several years ago, when school security became increasingly important for all of us here in the district, and the board was really supportive of us increasing security in the district, we contracted with Alteris to provide us with the expertise that was needed in order to secure our campuses, our buildings, and also to provide us with guidance and advice when we have emergency situations, when we are preparing for emergency situations and drills. And they've been really invaluable in supporting our school district where safety and security are concerned. They also are very supportive when we have, as I said, a problem or an emergency, because we reach out to them and they provide us with guidance and advice. So Mr. Shanahan is a senior VP at Alteris Consulting Group. He served as a school resource officer and police detective assigned to juvenile investigations. He's presented at national and international conferences for juvenile safety, as well as numerous parent safety forums. Mr. Shanahan currently works with over 200 schools in 4 states, both public and private. Brian has worked with Alteris Consulting Group for the past 14 years, and we are thrilled to have him here to provide that perspective.
information that's already been presented. Look at some of the positives, good communication, benefits that happen. Things that we're able to keep connected both families, across the country, internal communities. We also have to keep in mind some of the bad things that we have to do. Be on top of it. Watch, which we talked about earlier, watch some of the online media. What information is being shared? How much information and how to reduce the amount of information? We talk about some communication that could be a little dangerous when we talk about how that affects our school. We do a great job, we do great phenomenal job here. We're talking about with the infrastructure, when we talk about training, when we talk about practicing, talk about that physical. We don't always spend a lot of time on it, which happens here. One of the things that I think I appreciate that you can hear and having this tonight is actually talking about the digital aspect. I'm concerned about that social media because it really becomes a domino effect when we talk about the impact of schools when things are being said, things are being spread, and we talk about some of those cyberbullying situations. As we see on some of just one of many, just several of many articles that are out there, the 24-hour news cycle, all the things that we've seen that potentially become an ability to dangerous situations, just based on certain threatening comments, threatening messaging that could be sent, continue to be sent. Sometimes we get something that we catch social media, we just keep hitting send or forward. It may not immediately impact the school. Everyone, I'm sure, remembers the incidents in December. Concerns and threats. That hit every school across America. And it built on all the anxiety of our students, our staff, and our communities. Each thought was impacting their own school. I think that's one of the important things to remember when you're watching and utilizing social media, not to be and law enforcement professionals to talk about the impact beyond that, which could affect our children. One of the famous sayings we use all the time, and many people use, is online actions as real world consequences. I think that's very challenging. I think that's something that everybody has to digest when we talk about what we're doing, how we're doing things on social media, all the popular mediums that are out there. The doctor talked about all of Snapchat, TikTok, and how enticing this can be. They're wonderful when they're used appropriately, but they become really dangerous when we are not watching what's being said or sending those negative pieces, those negative messages, because it could plummet a school or school district potentially into an evacuation, lockdown situation, just based on digital messaging that may not even be credible, but just to have that better understanding of what we're presenting, what information are we actually sharing, and what access we have.
My name is Justin. I'm 9.5, and I have an iPad, a computer. I also use my mom's phone sometimes. I watch TV and I listen to Sonos. Well, I usually have my media time on the weekends only, and I usually play maybe an hour in the morning. Then I might have 30 minutes watching TV. Then I might have breakfast.
My name is Lauren. I'm 11 years old, and the devices we have in our home are the family iPad, the TV, my phone, the Wii, and my laptop. On weekends, I watch TV. I think I spend the most time on my phone, either playing games or texting my friends. I started using Instagram in 6th grade. One of the things I like about Instagram is that I can see what my friends are doing, and I look at the things that my friends post and post things of my own sometimes. And all of my friends have Instagram.
I usually play Minecraft a lot because you could find ingredients and build something with your own stuff. If I didn't have my media time, I would probably feel kind of sad, and I probably would feel mad that I didn't get it.
So I think one of the big things to keep in mind as we look at all of the resources that when we were growing, adults in the room, when we were growing up, typically it was like one computer in one room, and we'd all see what was happening there. Now the devices are in our pockets and tablets all over the place, in bedrooms, in hallways, and watches. I think this is where we need to encourage, and this is, talking about just the dangers of some of the situations that are still out there. You hear this quite often. Law enforcement talks about it all the time. We talk about it in schools, just beyond the dangers of the psychological impacts, the dangers of actually meeting bad people in bad times. Cyberbullying, those kind of situations are continually occurring across America and could affect the internal part of the actions of what are happening inside of the schools. Our photos, videos, comments that are usually made, how that's being taken. And many times, whether we realize it or not, the way that we receive a message, or we perceive rather a message, could be a threat of some sort. Somebody can interpret that as a threat. And this is where, when we look at the statistics nationwide, what we need to be doing better about. Last year, just a quick stats, last year there was over 24 school shootings across America. We didn't know about all of them because they don't hit that 24-hour news cycle. 98% of those school shootings had indicators that a shooting was going to take place on social media. But the challenge that happened was that people weren't reporting. People weren't talking. People weren't having some communication. We've talked about that as well, that communication with our schools. One of the big pieces that is important is anonymous reporting. If there's no other way to report. You have that in place here in this district, which is fantastic. And you're going to talk about that later. But another piece to this is threat assessment. And that's a training piece that they're going to be taking place in our school buildings to work towards what is it that could potentially be a danger? What is it that could potentially be something that we need to investigate further so we can some of these major incidents? The biggest thing, and spending time on these preventative measures, is much more valuable and effective than dealing with the aftermath of a major situation or a tragedy that could happen in schools. So I think it's really important as we're moving forward, looking at some of the things you can do, and we kind of talked about that already, and some of our other speakers here. Our encouragement of what our students should be doing. Being nice, being respectful, thinking before you hit enter, thinking before you hit slides, sending things forward. I think it's important also to look at what we're exposing our children to, making sure everything's age appropriate, so we avoid any of these negative or threatening type of situations from their environment, what they may be sending forward. And part of that we have to look at what are our parental controls, what are the age appropriate pieces that we can use for privacy settings. We have to be very careful and understand the facts when we take pictures, when we send things. Those kind of pieces are all geotagged, so they usually gives and can take out of that photo what the location is, and also how we want to be very open and friendly with our own friends, our family members, our fellow students. We're taking photos, potentially with the names of our schools on it, giving more intimate details of our life as our student body. I think a big thing to keep in mind, and just a suggestion as we move forward, is use the "what would grandma say" rule. Think about what it is you're going to send, and would you send what you're about to send to grandma? If you're not going to send it to grandma, we shouldn't be posting it or sending it across the internet or across other locations. That being said, I appreciate your time, and I'm going to pass this along to our next.
Sure. Oh, okay, sorry.
I got it, yeah.
I'd now like to introduce our three police officers from the 4th Precinct who are joining us tonight. Officers DeStasio, DeLeonardo, and Officer Ruff. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to say a word about the 4th Precinct. You guys are amazing. The support that you provide to our school district and our community is unparalleled. And over the last few years, and I will give a shout out to Commissioner Ryder, I know it's been important for him to increase the support to school districts, and it's really evident in the relationships that we've built. So thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you do for us and our community every day.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. All right, what's going on, guys? I'm Officer DeStasio. This is my partner, Officer DeLeonardo. We're from 4th Precinct Pop Unit, Pops Problem-Oriented Policing. A lot of what we do with the schools, and we're just going to start from there. Just show of hands before we start. We're talking about Snapchat a lot. Who's got Snapchat? Everybody, right? And everybody knows what Snapchat does. We take a picture, and then it goes away, right? Where does that picture go? Does anybody know where the picture goes? It's probably stuck somewhere in some sort of database. So what we always talk about is everybody out there, we leave a digital footprint. Digital footprint is pretty much every single thing you do online. Now, when we talk legal ramifications on things like that, this is going to affect you not just now, it's going to affect your future as well. And I'm talking to everybody that's young here too, that's going to go to college and get a job. Something that we had to go through when we both got on this job was I had to meet with an investigator that looked into every aspect of my life. And one of the things that he did, walked in, I had my iPhone, came in, he goes, I want you to open up all your social media accounts. Snapchat, MySpace, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, every single thing that you had. Opened it up, and I just handed this guy my phone. He went back and he looked at every single one of my pictures, every single thing that I went from in high school and everything like that. And he walked me back in the room and he goes, I want to ask you something. He goes, what's with all the solo cups in the background on one of the pictures? So I don't know, we really like apple juice. And it just shows you that it's something that sits there and sticks with you your entire life. They question everything. So that's always going to be there. So just remember that as far as what you post and what you see online. Also, another big thing that we keep seeing a lot that we keep dealing with the schools as well is that everybody constantly likes to take videos and pictures of people. And a lot of them somehow end up being in the bathrooms or they're just extremely inappropriate pictures. One thing that's extremely major that most parents don't know and everything too is that when one of you guys, because you're all minors under the age of 18, has an inappropriate picture of another minor that's under the age of 18, that's child pornography. You're in possession of child pornography. And when you send that picture to one of your friends because you think it's funny or you think it's a joke or other people want to see it, now that's dissemination of child pornography by you guys. So that's 2 laws you just broke right there. And these are serious accusations and consequences that come with it. This is something that, again, is going to stick with you the rest of your life if you get convicted of that. Because now at the age of 14, because you decided to take a video of somebody in the bathroom because you thought it was funny, now you're a registered sex offender for the rest of your life. So the things that are out there, it's very, very serious.
In terms of social media, just like Officer DeStasio was saying, we see a lot of stuff in terms of Snapchat. Some instances where kids are posting, pictures of imitation firearms. It may be stuff that, I understand sometimes parents, they're buying kids, airsoft guns and things of that nature. They may post pictures of that. Someone else might take that picture, resnap that picture and add some context to it. And before you know it, the school becomes aware of it. And now people think that there's maybe some type of active shooter incident going on. And we're notified and we head down to the schools. We have instances where we're heading down to the school. We're speaking to students. We're going through their locker to make sure there's nothing in there that's going to harm anybody. If need be, we're going to their homes. We're searching through their homes, through their bedrooms, through the parents' bedrooms, because at the end of the day, we have a job to do. We're just like you entrust these men and women here with your children. We have a job to keep this community safe. And we've been to many of these schools. We've talked to kids about social media, and one thing we've harped on is that as a police department, we want your kids to know that we're friends. We're here to help them. We're here to keep them safe. We're not here to scare children. We're not here to harm them. But at the same time, we're not in the business of joking around. So when it comes to things of this nature, we take all threats and all posts extremely, extremely serious. And we will do everything in our power to make sure that that your children are safe at the end of the day. You drop them off at school, and at the end of the day, you go to pick them up, and you know they're coming home safe. So, like I said, we will do whatever we can. So it's important that as parents, you kind of take an active role in what in what your kids are doing on social media, who they're talking to on social media, what they're saying in group chats amongst their friends. Also, Destasio touched on, pictures they're taking, inappropriate pictures in the bathroom, taking pictures they may be taking pictures of their teachers at schools. I'm sure there's, school conduct in terms of that. This is all important stuff. Also, in terms of the language they're using on social media, in terms of, comments they may be making in regards to, we all come from different races, religions, sexual orientation, things of that nature. It's important that you teach your kids, to limit the comments they're making and to be and to take responsibility for the things they're doing.
Because there is a fine line when it comes to free speech and also when it comes to hate speech. And like we were talking about before of Mr. Shannon was talking about with interpretation, I mean, everything now is scrutinized. I mean, we see it constantly. It's on the news every single day that there's something else that's taken either out of context or somebody tries to make a joke about it. Back to the example that we were talking about where there was a student at one of the schools that we visited that took a picture of a gun and then it got misinterpreted the entire way through. We spoke to him and he said, if you know me, I kid around. I like to joke. We just looked at him and he said, well, I don't know you and I don't know you're joking. And that's another thing like we're talking about with a lot of the comments that are made. We don't know what's a joke. So when you say certain things, that does involve us and involve us like you just spoke about. That's going to bring us down. We come to your house, we check your whole house. We get our detectives involved. Every single member on the school board is involved from every school because we want to know about who you were as a young kid, who you're going to become, what you're doing now, why you're doing it now, because we got to know and we got to rule you out as to not be a terrorist. Because the highest level that you can take these things at, especially with something like this, that's why we use this example of the gun, it's a terroristic threat. We've seen the school shootings, we've heard of everything. I was young when Columbine happened, but that was something that reached out to everybody and I think changed every single aspect of schooling across America and what we didn't know and what we didn't realize. Because those threats are real, unfortunately. And all it takes is one dumb comment to the wrong person for no reason to spark something that could be so bad. So we ask you guys from the bottom of my heart, please tell your friends, tell your family members, everybody you know, watch what you say and do. Treat everybody the way you want to be treated. I know it sometimes falls on deaf ears and it goes in out one ear out the other. I mean, listen, I was young too and it happened that way, but I'll tell you, it's something very, very serious when it's, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words hurt now because everybody hides behind a keyboard and they say what they want. So guys, be respectful to each other, be respectful to the adults, especially the teachers in the school, and let's try to have a good community.
And I just want to jump in for a second because I think there's a point that bears repeating. We had a question come in on the Padlet wall. How do you deem what is a valid or invalid social media threat? So,
well, I mean, listen, it all depends. Like we'll read it, we'll go through it, we'll look at context and stuff like that, especially knowing what goes on. If it's just a blanketed statement, we got to take it for what it is. So whatever the words that are up there say, we're going to just take it in the most serious way possible. Other than that, I mean, we try to look at things, we try to objectify things. That's why we always go out and we do a full investigation, no matter what it comes down to. From the smallest post to the smallest etching on a wall somewhere, we investigate it fully and thoroughly to make sure that there is no threat. Yeah, so regarding the incident that you're talking about as well, I mean, we still do have an investigation that's ongoing as far as what goes on. And, as great as, you watch a TV show in 60 minutes, it'd be awesome if police work like that. Unfortunately, things take a little bit longer and, we have to cross our T's, dot our I's to make sure that we get everything, we do everything legally. What we're talking about right now too, I mean, there's a lot of things that are protected under freedom of speech. But freedom of speech also has that limitation when it becomes hate speech. So anything that could be deemed hate speech or anything that could be deemed an actual threat does push us past that line to go one step further into an investigation. When it comes to what's being spoken about right now, when there's multiple comments that are happening like this, and it is affecting the community, is affecting the way people act in, day in and day out in the school district, it's becoming harassment. And then it gets to a level of aggravated harassment, and we just keep going up the chain with the comments that are seen. So even though one or two comments may be out there, they come and go, and it's, doesn't seem that it's that bad, eventually it does become that bad. So in regards to what's going on right now and what does happen, it is an investigation. Unfortunately, I can't speak much about it. And we're just going to take our time and just make sure that we have everything that we can do to find who's responsible for all this.
Good evening. We're gonna talk a little bit about how we as administrators in our 3 buildings in the district handle complaints when they come in. But I do want to start off by saying that we do work, as has been said, very closely with the police. And these 2 gentlemen have been here every time we've called. The majority of the phone calls that we've made to the police have been related to social media, the vast majority. If we're ever in doubt, we are calling the police. And if that means the police are going to be questioning students, that's what the case may be. We will call you before the police speaks with your child to come up and be present. But if we're ever in doubt, we are going to call the police and ask them what we should be doing, because we are not criminal investigators. We're going to share our process, but we are not criminal investigators. They are. So we're going to ask them for assistance whenever we can. And if they take it in their hands, then it's out of the school hands. So anything that is done within school, even outside of school, because the code of conduct, as we'll talk about, applies to any action that a student takes in school, on the way home from school, on the way to school, at a school event. Anything that's done outside of school that spills into the school building is something that we will have to deal with. And a lot of what we deal with on a daily basis deals with what's happening outside of school and spills into the building. And the problems with that, other than the effect that it has on our students, is the time that it takes out of the day. The amount of time that it takes for us to deal with the situation that occurs outside of school on a Saturday night, on a Sunday morning, whatever it is, it takes the time out of our day. Not that it's not our job to deal with it. However, so many of these things take 4, 5 staff members, hours each to deal with. We have social workers and guidance counselors who are spending entire days dealing with one situation, dealing with 1 or 2 students that happen outside of school that prevents them from dealing with all the other things that they should be dealing with on a daily basis. Guidance counselors are not dealing with things like helping kids prepare their college applications or pushing that off because of something that happened on a Friday or Saturday night outside of school. Teachers are spending their time policing phones in classrooms where they're not supposed to be instead of teaching, instead of students actually learning. So it's really important that we pay attention to what the code of conduct says, what the school rules actually are,
because phones can and will be confiscated when necessary. And let me make sure I hit all my bullet points. And yes, on my phone, sorry. However, and the other thing is, when we are investigating these issues, we are often having to pull kids from class, which pulls them out of learning even more. Sometimes students, we have to isolate students while we're investigating. It could pull them out of class for 2-3 periods at a time. That's all time that they are missing instruction based on what they have done, a lot of times outside of school, because there are a lot of eyes on them when they're in school. There are a lot of times where the cell phones come out and they're told to put away. Like I'm going to say right now to the balcony, put your phones away. You should be listening to every word I'm saying. So we're really asking you to make sure that this message, you drive this message home at home, that phones, this is not the place for phones, and be aware that whatever is done on a phone can lead to a suspension, can lead to in-school consequences. There is no time off from the time that the discipline code applies. So I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Terranova and Ms. Kelly, who are going to talk about our process.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. I was having trouble with that microphone. Hi, everyone. First one off to thank everyone who is here this evening. It's incredibly important to see all of our faces from all 3 of our schools in East Rockaway. It just shows our commitment to our future, which is the children that are sitting here and the children that are sitting at home. So we want to thank you for that. So what I will do, I will be speaking about, as well as with Ms. Terranova, is a little bit about the process on how we go through when there is an allegation or an incident that occurs. So usually what happens is that a parent, staff member, or a student does inform us as an administrative team of an allegation or an incident. From that point, we're to determine about if it's a DASA complaint. From there, the DASA complaint is then launched and we move through that process. If parents are filling out the forms that are located on the East Rockaway School website, they are given to the school building administrator. At that point, from when we have an investigation, or if there is an alleged incident that we are investigating, we do inform parents of the children that are involved and their families of what's going on. It's very important that we ensure that both of us, everyone here in this room, as well as who are in our community, are partners, because open communication is incredibly important. And we want to make sure that all of us are on the same page, again, as we said earlier, to ensure that the safety of our children are our utmost priority. And being able to investigate and go through those steps together and being open and honest is part of that process. Once we go there, we go do, and what Mr. Schaefer did share a little bit, is we speak with all students involved. Some of that are the alleged students, and I use the word alleged because this is something that we're investigating. We're looking into. We're trying to find out what happened and get the facts from everyone that's involved. And part of that process is we do speak to the students, parents, staff members, and any witnesses that are shared, because it's very important that we hear every aspect of what's happening and every perspective that's going on, because it's very important for us as people who are on the outside to ensure every voice is heard. And at that point, families are informed and share that your child has been spoken with, because again, just to continue to foster that relationship that we hold very dear to ensure that we're all on the same page. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Kelly. Before I continue with the flow chart, I just want to echo, first and foremost, when you're sharing critical information that can keep people safe, both physically, emotionally, academically, that is not ratting, that is making the community an even better place. And I thank families, students, and staff who have the courage and conviction to do that, because without that, the folks who are really terrorizing people would continue even at a faster rate. So I have to thank you.
Once the investigation continues, central office is always informed. If necessary, the community, as happened recently, our local 4th precinct officers, even the FBI, other agencies are contacted. I do want to also point out that we have aligned our practices among the 3 buildings so that students are really getting a feel for what they face as the years progress in an appropriate manner. We provide families with an update on the status of the complaint and if the complaint was substantiated or not. We inform the offender because at this point, it's no longer alleged when we have the proof, and their family of consequences. Consequences, if any, are related to the code of conduct, which we will briefly elucidate in a minute, and the BOE policies. I have to make this crystal clear because I know everyone wants their day in court, but we cannot share consequences that are assigned by law to any student with anyone else but that student's family. So it pains me when you ask, well, what happened? Nothing ever happens. There are no consequences. There are always consequences, but we cannot by law, based on the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which is acronymed FERPA, tell you what those consequences are. We can't tell other students what those consequences are, and you wouldn't want that information shared if your student is ever the offender. And I'm really proud of this piece that we've really bolstered over the past several years. Students will work with support staff to not only understand how to feel better about being victimized, but also what's the root of your issue as the offender that's causing you to bully others? Because when you're hurting other people, you're hurting yourself. And that's usually the cause. And we provide restorative strategies moving forward. I'm just going to briefly talk about the code of conduct and where this is specifically referenced. The entire thing is online. It's 5330 Board of Education policy in our code of conduct. The use of electronic devices, personal or school issued, in undesignated areas, including classrooms, is prohibited. Engaging in behavior on or off campus that interferes with the learning process of others is prohibited. Conduct that endangers the safety, morals, physical or mental health or welfare of others, which is what our brothers at the police force mentioned earlier, including threats, harassment, bullying, intimidation, and cyberbullying. Discriminatory, vulgar, or abusive language. Simply put, just call people by their given name and what they want to be called by and nothing else. Indecent exposure, offering or distributing illegal substances or items, and gambling and extortion, which has become a major online racket that our kids are exposed to, just like almost analogous to Joe Camel in the 80s. And as Mr. Schaefer said, I want to echo the code of conduct may be applied to any use of cell phone, social media in school or out of school, because as you know, and as we've all indicated, it impacts every moment of our day. And we could be spending that time on so many more positive issues for your children and our children and staff. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a couple questions come in on the Padlet. We had some really great feedback about the presentations, the panel here. The topics that the police officers touched on tonight are very important. And there were a couple questions regarding assemblies and classroom visits, and perhaps if the administration can just speak to that.
Thank you for sharing that. So we do have on both levels, our elementary schools, as well as working with our junior, senior high school, presentations that we've already partnered with our local police departments that will be coming to our schools and working with our 5th and 6th graders. Especially I can speak to Rame Avenue and Center Avenue myself. And one thing that was a suggestion that was brought from a community member we're so grateful for is really just thinking about how can we address this also with our youngest of learners when it comes to our 3rd graders, our 4th graders, because everyone does have a one-to-one device. And Dr. MacArthur and I, working with our central office team, are definitely brainstorming together to figure out what we can do to support all of our learners in navigating this very muddy road safely. And it's important for us to be partners and working with you, not only with our children, but also working with our parents and our families. So we can echo the same message when we're at home, at the same thing at school. So we do have a lot of that coming in the spring, specifically for our 5th and our 6th graders, and working closely with the junior senior high school to ease that transition, especially with our 6th graders as they enter into the 7th grade.
And in terms of the 7th and 8th grade, we already had the Office of Homeland Security here a couple of weeks ago to speak to the 7th and 8th grade with a lot of the same messages. And then we will, just as one aside, students, if you are here, make sure you see your principal before you leave if you want your extra credit or homework passed. All right, I think it's back to me. Can we pass the magic clicker down here? Thank you again, everybody, for being with us. I'm going to try to be as efficient as possible with the last couple slides. So we got a lot of great content, all different angles that we talked about tonight. And actually, as I'm looking at the panel, at the Padlet, we had some questions about engaging our students. How do we continue the conversation? So in order to continue the conversation, of course, we have to address the elephant in the room. We have to start the conversation if we haven't already. Some guiding questions I put up there on the slide behind me. We should be asking our children, we should be asking ourselves as models of social media use. What is your brand? What do you stand for? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What are you excited about? What are you passionate about? And how will you make the world, as each of us are doing in our own little way, no matter your age, no matter your profession, how will you make the world a better place? And then we take those questions and then speaking to digital footprints and all the great stuff that we heard tonight, if I did an internet search on you or on myself or on anybody else in this room, what's going to come up? Is that going to match your goals, your passions, and what you're really about? So what we're doing here at East Rockaway, and we heard a lot of great things already, so I don't want to repeat any old points, but we have these brand new K-12 continuum technology standards. We are integrating this into, these are skills that we are integrating into our classes all throughout K-12. We also have some really great projects. We are integrating responsible, we are modeling responsible social media and technology use. That was a couple questions that we had in the Padlet as well. What are we doing in schools? So I'm really proud of the work that we did. Ms. Maney, Ms. Grace over here, some of your work is up here as well, your students' work, and such remarkable projects and all around our schools. And the anonymous alerts piece that we touched on before, I just want to bring that up to the forefront and show you some screenshots. We've got links to this prominently displayed on our website. We do want to provide folks an opportunity, an avenue to report something to us if something is not right. We have a link on the top menu of our page. We have a mobile app. Inside that mobile app as well, there's a ton of great resources, how-tos, phone numbers, contact information, Northwell Health, a whole Rolodex of contacts to get a hold of to help yourself and to help others. I'm trying to go as quickly as possible. Some takeaways, some skills, and some things that we can bring back into our own households. Again, about continuing the conversation. What do we do from here? What's next? So creating a safe and productive working environment. I think that's a really important start as well. Choosing an area where our children, where our students are going to be doing schoolwork, something that's centrally located, distraction-free, and the science says, and Dr. Foy can probably back this up, try to avoid the bedroom. It's just the way our brains are wired. Set up a place for work, centrally located, brightly lit, keep all those school supplies nearby. I think one thing that we learned from the pandemic is, the people that were working remote, getting up, going to the fridge, grabbing a cup of water, getting up, going downstairs, grabbing a snack, getting up, sharpening that pencil, just any excuse to move away from your desk. You keep all those things near your desk, you can be more productive and more efficient with your work. Prepping the learning space, I talked about that already. Establishing a routine, setting aside 20 to 30 minutes a day to be productive. And then some technology things that we can do with the devices that we already have. This doesn't cost anything at all. These are ways that we can leverage the tech that we already have to take that layered approach and not only model, but in some cases guide our students and our learners to appropriate strategies and appropriate apps, and to restrict or limit misuse. So on Apple devices, we've got screen time. These settings are baked right into iPhones and iPads. I have a link. Again, I'm just trying to be as quick as I can on time. There's a link at the bottom of this slide. If you download this slide, you can click in, you can Google it, search for screen time, and it'll give you step-by-step on how we can set that up on the device. For Microsoft and Windows, their equivalent, if you're on a Windows 10 device, we have something called Family Safety. Again, this is built right into Windows. This is not a annual subscription or an additional cost. This is built into Windows. And also, as some of our other panelists said, for our East Rockaway schools issued devices, we have Linewise filtering, but we also have some additional protections built into the devices themselves. Linewise does give us those red flag notifications, but it also makes sure that the searches and the internet use, what's going in and out, is also appropriate and is filtered and is moderated. And also, I think the main focus was social media, but we have to talk about the app privacy. And I saw within this slideshow, within this panel, we had a couple screenshots on, location, device, camera access, microphone access. So we want to be very careful when we download a new app. What exact permissions are we allowing that app to have? You want to be very careful. I think a lot of us were sort of just ingrained to clicking OK, reading the 400-page terms of service, clicking I agree, saying yes, yes, yes. Right? I think we all do that, but we need to pause a little bit. We need to look at what exactly this app is asking for. And if I'm downloading a running app and it wants to use my location, fine. But if I'm downloading a stopwatch app and it wants to read my phone book and access my camera and access my location and figure out when I'm asleep and I'm awake, but I'm saying, hey, this is just a stopwatch. Why does it need all that stuff? So we really need to think about what the app is actually doing and what permissions it really needs in order to do its job, in order to operate. So I touched on a couple of these questions. What's the purpose of the app? What does it do? And then what permissions are we giving away? The app tracking. This is a new feature that's built into Apple. So again, it all comes down to just watching the pop-ups and being careful with what we are agreeing to, accepting on an ongoing basis. A couple other things too. I'm going to get maybe a little bit nerdy here. If you are technologically inclined, in our houses, we have all of our internet traffic goes in and out of a wireless router or modem, right? So any device that you have in your house that's Wi-Fi, it is, when you're on the internet, when you're loading a website, it is tunneling through your modem. So what we can all do, whether you have a Linksys, whether you have a Netgear, whether you bought your router yourself or you got it from your internet service provider, there are settings on the router itself that do allow you to control, on most routers, that allow you to control the device access itself. So I can shut off, my child's iPhone after 10:30 at night. It doesn't power it off. It just kind of turns off the internet activity. So, watching an offline video, playing a game of solitaire on the phone, that's fair game. But surfing the network, going on social media after certain hours, I can actually turn that off at the router level. If that's something you're interested in, it's hard to give like a cookie cutter set of directions for that, but check with your internet service provider and see what equipment you have. If you're paying that monthly rental fee to like rent their equipment, it's quite possible, it's probably very likely that they will service it for you for free. It doesn't hurt to pick up the phone or go on their website and just see how you can leverage those features. A lot of these routers, these modems have that functionality, again, built in. It costs nothing. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
So,
Dr. Foyer has something.
Just want to piggyback on that. I'm not technologically savvy, but I mentioned Common Sense Media before. Really very step-by-step instructions for parents on what settings to check on Snapchat to make sure your child's not inadvertently giving their location away to anyone and only their friends can see it. For example, very concrete instructions, and it's worthwhile going through it as you're allowing kids to have access to different things to set that up. And they even have articles about these more fancy things that you're talking about.
It's a fabulous site. It's really excellent information. Well, I really appreciate you all coming out. Those people that are watching online, I would like to thank all of our panel members for being here and for their knowledge and expertise and their time.